You're watching Press TV. Time now for the news review. Iran's top general says that the country won't tolerate the presence of thousands of armed terrorists close to its borders and will continue military operations against them. Chief of Staff of Iranian Armed Forces Major General Mohammad Bagheri was referring to the presence of terrorists backed by the U.S. and Israel in the Iraqi Kurdistan region. He said that Iran has frequently warned the Iraqi Kurdistan's officials against allowing such armed groups to have bases there. Bagheri said that the terrorist group should either give up their arms and turn into non-military groups or be expelled by officials of the Kurdistan region. Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps has launched a series of multi-pronged military attacks on terrorist bases in Iraqi Kurdistan. The bases played a role in fueling violent riots across Iran in recent weeks. Now, to discuss that, I'll be joined by John Bosnich, as a journalist, activist, and political analyst in Belgrade. Also with me is Marcus Papadopoulos, historian, political analyst, and author in London. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Now, John, this is what Iran, what the story is. Multiple warnings, and unfortunately it fell on deaf ears, and then in different ways, as I just said in the intro, Iran has been threatened by the presence of terrorists on Iraqi soil, the Kurdistan region. And that's why IRGC decided to, from time to time, to launch operations against them. Let's have your comment on this.
Well, this is a natural right of every sovereign country to protect itself from external attack, and especially from terror attacks. Iran is working fully within its own legal rights to protect its territory from ongoing attacks and any threatened attack. This is nothing new, and Iran has every right to do so.
Okay. Marcus, Iran and Iraq have good relations, and but you know what the presence of foreign forces has been wreaking havoc there. Iraqi parliamentarians a few years ago asked for foreign forces led by the U.S. to leave. They are still there, and Iran believes that this also has to do with what's happening in the Iraqi Kurdistan region.
Well, these are particularly critical times for Iran. What with the hand of America at work on Iran's border with Iraq, and also at work inside of Iran itself. And in regard to the latter, I am referring to the small yet violent, murderous protests which occurred in Iran and which bore all the hallmarks of how America historically attempts to incite civil disobedience in a country of geostrategic importance, which does not bow down to American diktats. And I am of the firm opinion that these particularly critical times for Iran and for the Iranian people fall at a time when Iran is steadfast in its support for Russia. So I believe that America and some of its allies are attempting to weaken the Russian army in Ukraine and Russia as a whole by attempting to weaken Iran. And in regard to Iraq, we have to understand that Iraq is not a vassal state of America's. A very good modern day example of a colony of America's is Serbia, whose president, one Alexander Vučić, constantly talks about how he is an independent leader and he has internal enemies all around him. Well, that is simply a way of maintaining the facade that both he and Serbia are independent. But no, when it comes to Iraq, the Americans have considerable influence inside of Iraq, particularly in the north of the country and in the center, and very little influence in the south of Iraq. So the Americans are clearly amassing terrorist forces in the north of Iraq on the border with Iran to try and weaken Iranian national security at a time when Iran is very fervent in its political support to Russia concerning the war in Ukraine. And I would say to the Kurds of northern Iraq to be very careful as to who they get into bed with, because it was the Americans who supplied Saddam Hussein with chemical weapons, and then Saddam Hussein used those chemical weapons in Halabja in the late 1980s, which caused the deaths of thousands of Kurds. So the Kurds should be very cautious about having entered an unholy alliance with Washington.
Okay. And John, in your opinion, what's U.S. plan agenda for Iraq? When they were present there, you see what happened to Iraq, and when they're there, they say we're just securing and training the Iraqi forces there. And does the U.S. really want to see Iraq prosper and also at the same time have good relations with its neighbors like Iran?
Well, the United States has a tendency of using other countries for its own interests first. It does have allies, but in the case of Iraq, it's using Iraq as a tool against the country of Iran. And this was part of the original American military plan in the region, first to bring down Iraq and then to use Iraq using proxy parties like the Kurds to attack Iran. And we're now seeing that Iran is not going to allow further encroachment in its region. And this is also tightly connected with not just Russia, but with China. So we have a situation in which America has come up against a defensive group that is not ready to yield to further American encroachment in the area.
Okay. And Marcus, in a couple of minutes, what do you think is a solution to the threat that Iran is feeling because of the presence of terrorists close to its borders in the Iraqi Kurdistan?
Under international law, Iran has every right to ensure that its borders are 100% secure. And I believe that the Iranian government has many, many years of experience and is exceedingly adept in ensuring the security of Iran's borders. And we also have to take into consideration that Albania, which is a NATO member and a strategic friend and ally to Washington, is awash with terrorist training camps which comprise personnel from the horrendous, murderous MEK terrorist organization, which has immense blood of Iranian civilians, men, women, and children on its hands. So the Iranians will undoubtedly take steps to ensure that its border with Iraq is secure, and also the Iranian government exerts influence inside of Iraq. Iran has a good relationship with the Iraqi government, which again takes me back to what I said moments ago. Whilst America has very considerable influence inside of Iraq, nonetheless, the Iraqi government is not a colony of America's, and that is demonstrated by the Iraqi government's close relationship with Iran.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments and insight. John Bostich in Belgrade, Marcus Papadopoulos in London. Thank you for watching this episode of the News Review on Press TV.